How does your conscience work? Hi, I'm Mike Mason. This is the Immortal Combat Podcast. The Immortal Combat Podcast is the podcast arm of Viri Christi. Viri Christi is a Catholic lay apostolate devoted to help young men attain the full stature of Christ by growing strong in mind, body, and spirit. If you'd like to learn more about our work, you can check us out online at verichristi.com. All right, fellas, this is Intro to Moral Theology, episode 22. Last week, we talked about what a conscience is. Okay. And what we said is that there's a lot of faulty views of conscience. That it's a gut instinct or popular opinion or your feelings or some things like that. What we discovered is that your conscience is in your intellect. Okay. It's in your mind. And what the conscience does is you have the ability to recognize the basic rules of the moral law, right? Like the 10 Commandments type stuff. Honor God, honor parents, don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't lie, don't cheat. Okay. You have those, but you have to make choices right here and right now on how to do it. So you have to connect the moral law to the thing you're about to doing. That's what the conscience does. It sits in between the two and says, okay, I'm not supposed to lie. This thing, if I said this, this would be a lie. So I'm not going to say it. Conscience performs that role. And so we talked last week that conscience is subjective in the sense that it's in you, the subject, and it connects the object of moral law to your circumstances. Cool? All right. What I want to talk this week is I want to develop that a little bit more by talking about how conscience works. Okay. And then we're going to talk about how temptation happens too. And I think you guys will find that part helpful. All right. How's conscience work? The way conscience works, just to repeat, is like what I said. The starting point is a recognition of what's right and wrong. Okay. The objective moral law. So the objective moral law is lies are not allowed. The second movement or second part has to be is this thing, the particular circumstance I'm in, is this thing, if I say it, a lie? And if the answer is yes, the conclusion is I can't do it. So lying's wrong. This thing's a lie. I'm not going to say it. Lying's wrong. This is not a lie. I can say it if I want. Okay. This is how conscience works. It starts with like a universal, broad, law, and then it works down to a particular application. Okay. So that's how it works. Now, that's pretty straightforward. You might be tempted to think at this point, well, if it's that simple, why isn't everybody moral? Because if you walk around and take a survey, say, should people honor God? Most people would say yes. Should people honor their parents? Most people would say yes. Should people kill other people? They'll say no. Should you commit adultery? No. Should you lie? No. Should you cheat? No. Should you steal? No. Okay. Well, it seems then if it's that clear and all you got to do is just apply it to your circumstance, everybody should be like a really upright moral person. The problem is it's very clear people are not. And so what I'd like to talk about with our time here, I think will be really helpful for you guys, is I want to talk about how temptation works in light of what I just said. Because I think if you guys can identify how temptation works, you're going to have some really good, helpful tools in your toolbox to help you overcome them. Now, this part's it's easier to teach if I had like a whiteboard behind me and we were sitting together. We're not. One thing I might encourage you to do is to hit pause here, go to our website, and I always give you guys these meeting handouts. I put what I'm about to say next on there, and probably looking at that, you can split screen it, print off, whatever you want to do. It might make it a little bit easier, okay? Because there's a little bit of technical terms in there. I'm not going to use them here, but you should be able to track along with me just fine. So if you guys want, pause it, go grab that thing and come right back. All right. For Aristotle, when he's trying to talk about temptation, he says that whole thought process where I told you, like, what's the moral law? What is the thing I'm about to do? And then the conclusion. The fancy term for that's called a pro-heretic syllogism. So a pro-heretic syllogism is when you base your choices off the thing you're doing. Okay. So if you guys said, I shouldn't lie, this thing was a lie, therefore I'm not going to say it. That's the pro-heretic syllogism. It's based off the choice. It's based off the object. If you guys said committing adultery is wrong, if I did this, that would be adultery, so I'm not going to do it. That's pro-heretic. Okay, pretty straightforward. That's what we've been discussing. Again, if that's the only one we had, morality would be really straightforward and easy to do. Fortunately for us, it's not. The way Aristotle explains how temptation works, how self-deception works, how we deceive ourselves into doing the wrong thing, he says we don't only have that syllogism in our mind, but we have a second one. And the second one's called an appetitive syllogism. Now, fellas, we've talked about appetites in the past, right? The concupiscible appetite, which is the appetite for food, drink, and sex, and the irascible appetite, which is the appetite for difficult goods. We have these appetites as part of being human. The appetitive syllogism is not based on the thing you're doing. It's based on what you want to do or what's in your appetite. Okay. So let me give you an example of it. Let's say a person says, I want to eat what is unhealthy. This particular food's unhealthy, therefore I'm going to eat it. Okay, notice the difference. In the proheretic syllogism, it is what is unhealthy should not be eaten. So Twinkies should not be eaten. What is unhealthy should not be eaten. Premise 2, Twinkies are unhealthy, therefore I'm not going to eat them. The appetitive says, I want to eat junk food. Twinkies are junk food, therefore I'm going to eat them. See the subtle difference? Okay, for Aristotle, these syllogisms explain how temptation works, how deception works. So I'll explain in very simple terms. What's going on when you're tempted? Initially, what happens is you think to yourself, I shouldn't do such and such an action because it's wrong. Got it. But there's this other party who says, well, I kind of want to do it. But let's say your appetite or your desire to want to do it's not very strong. If it's not very strong, you're just gonna be like, well, I'm not going to do it, okay? Because I'm not giving into it. So let's say you guys are, you're not supposed to cheat on tests, and your desire to cheat's not very strong. Your parents raised you well, and you like to be honest, and so it's not really strong. It's there, but it's not that big a deal. Then you guys just don't look at your neighbor's paper in math class, and everything's fine, okay? That works a lot of the time. The problem happens is when that appetite or passion starts to flare up. It gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And it actually gets to the point where it's equal with the other one and then goes above it. What happens when the appetite flares up is your knowledge of right or wrong goes down, okay? If your passion flares up strongly enough, it overwhelms your mind, then you give in to the appetite. Because literally in that moment, you can't see what you're doing is wrong, okay? So the person on the diet who gives into the diet, as they're eating the McDonald's cheeseburger, they don't realize what they're doing is wrong. They're just, chowing it down. And in that moment, they don't even know it's wrong to do it. They can't articulate it. They can't think about it. It's gone. The problem, though, is, we all know this from experience, once you satisfy that appetite, what happens to it? It goes away. And what comes flooding back in? That proheretic syllogism that says, you shouldn't have done that. Okay? Guys, this is how deception works. Self-deception. This is how we deceive ourselves into things. We know things deep down are wrong, but our appetites flare up and they overwhelm our minds. And then we forget what's wrong. We give in to them. And then when they go away, we're like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. Okay. This is how Aristotle explains it. And guys, when I found this out, this was super helpful. Okay. Because now that you're equipped with this knowledge, what can you do with this? You can say, listen, I have certain appetites for things that aren't right. We all do. Identify what those are and say, okay, what times and places and circumstances make me want this thing more? And you just don't go into those circumstances. Okay. A lot of the moral life guys, we make way too hard on ourselves because we don't set our lives up well. What I would encourage you to do is set your life up for success. Okay. So an alcoholic just doesn't go to bars. Okay. If an alcoholic gets invited to a bar, he just says, no, I'm not going there. Why? Because he knows if he walks in, his temptation is going to go through the roof. And even if he doesn't give into it, it's going to stink because he's going to want to give into it. It's all his temptation. So he just doesn't even go in the first place. That's what you should do with this information. Okay. Guys, really think about this week. This is my meditation for you before we close. Think about ways to set your life up to make things easier. If your cell phone is a distraction, if your cell phone's tempting you to look at things you should not look at, well, then just don't take it in your room with you. Okay. Keep it on the counter. Okay. Only look at it in public. Guys, you can set your life up in a way to make it easier. If you guys don't want to get into the party lifestyle, you're in high school, you shouldn't be doing that stuff. Just don't go to those things. Go other places, baseball games, football games, basketball games, go bowling, do something else. Because if you're not in that circumstance, it's going to help a whole bunch. All right. We will talk about this a lot more in depth in the future, but really just meditate on that. How do I keep my appetites down so that I continue to make good choices and stay on the road to become the man God wants me to be? So I hope you guys have a blessed week. See you next time.